and welcome to the Leadership Edge. I'm your host, Ted Gorski. The Leadership Edge focuses on themes and topics to improve your leadership style in your day-to-day life. I am your host, Ted Gorski. I'm a professional leadership coach who focuses on helping leaders and organizations be more effective in what they do. And I've been meeting people on the street the last several weeks who've been talking about motivation. And you know what, Bill? Bill's my technical guy here who helps me. And you know, Bill, I came in today. I think I'm just going to mail it in. Kind of tired. I'm going to take it easy.
Ted, do you really want to do that?
Yeah, you know what? It's been a rough morning. And you know what? I just don't want to really push myself today. So can you bring in a Shea Lounge so I can just relax?
Hey, it's your show, but do you really want to do that?
No. You know, good point, Bill. Does this happen to you in the office? Do you have people who put in half effort? Do you battle that in staff meetings where you look around and they're just mailing it in? Well, you know, as leaders, we have to be not only motivated ourselves, but we have to motivate others. And that's what we're going to talk about in today's show, is this whole concept of motivation. What can we do as leaders to really motivate others? What do we need to do as leaders to motivate ourselves? Because after all, that's where we have to start with. Because if we're not motivated, how can we get our people to be motivated? Because it's my philosophy that everything is top down. If you're motivated, it will rub off on your team. But what I encounter on a day-to-day basis is when I'm working with leaders and organizations, they tell me, Ted, I'm the most motivated person here. But when I watch their body language and I look at them, I can tell for a fact that they're lying to me. So today's show is about really looking at this thing called motivation and leaving you with some kind of action to improve your motivational style, to improve your individual motivation. Because as a leader, this is probably one of the most important things that you can do to be successful in an organization. So let's get started and talk about what is motivation. And let's start off with the basic concept. This is one of the best definitions I've seen around. It's the intensity of a person's desire to engage in some activity. And the key word here is intensity. Now, a lot of times when I'm walking into organizations, I have leaders who tell me, yeah, we have a great motivational system for our people. And when I ask, tell me about it, one of the things they talk about is, you know what, my people are motivated, so what I do is I'll give them more money. Let me tell you something. As a leader, that's probably the worst thing you can do. Money is a temporary aphrodisiac. Let me repeat that. It's a temporary aphrodisiac. So let's say that you do give someone more money in their position. And you say, great, I got this person, they were all motivated. What's going to happen 2 weeks later where all of a sudden they go, well, that raise was great, but I want more. Doesn't last too long. The important part is that intensity of that behavior has to start within that person. That person's going to want to do a better job. That person's going to want to do better. So money is not the solution. And when my leaders tell me that, I tell them that same fact. Because the intensity has to start within a person. So let's say you say, I have motivated, my staff is motivated. How do you know? I call it, I know it when I see it. It's that old phrase, well, how do you know pornography? Well, I know it when I see it. Well, how do you know you have motivation in your office? These are 4 things that I look at when a leader tells me this. Number 1, it's a can-do attitude. Now, what do I mean by a can-do attitude? Well, if I'm giving you an assignment, you're telling me, sure, Ted, I can do it. If I'm giving you a challenging assignment, you're trying to figure out how to do it, instead of saying how you can't do it. See, it's a can't-do attitude. You can't do it because of time. I can't do it because of conflicting resource issues. But a can-do attitude is one where you're going to make it happen. Second part of it is having a positive attitude, that when you see an issue, there are positive ways that you can solve it. It has nothing to do with, well, if I get to it at some point. It's all about the positive nature. Because as leaders, we want people around us who are going to be positive to kind of get things done. I mean, think about this. When you're around a negative person, what do they do to you? What's that attitude do to you? Well, for me, I'll tell you one thing. It drags me down big time. And it's to a point that they sap our energy. They're like vampires. They're vampire energy sappers. Now, do you want those kind of people on your team? No. Positive attitude has a way of rubbing off on people. When you're around someone positive, how do you feel? Doesn't that make you feel energized? Doesn't it make you feel like you can do anything? That's what a positive attitude can do. And that's why it's real important. Thirdly, initiative. When people see a problem, they fix it. It isn't the, it's not my job approach. You know, I talk to a lot of leaders when I ask them about certain things, and I say, well, tell me about a certain situations. And when I hear, it's not my job, how does that not show a lack of initiative? And if you don't have initiative, or it's what I call it's not my job-itis, how in God's name is anything going to get done? So part of seeing a positive motivation in people is that someone, when they see a problem, are going to fix it. Or if they see a problem, they're going to come up and address it or give some solutions. That's when we know we have motivation in play. And lastly, there's enthusiasm. It's an enthusiasm to be in this environment that they're working in. It's being enthusiasm to work with other people. Now, if you have these four factors, I would say you might know and you might have a great motivational environment. But if some of these are lacking, I will tell you, in all cases, you probably don't have motivation in your environment. So, one of the things that you should look up, Gallup, which is that research company that does a lot of surveys, did one that's probably one of the best. It's called the Gallup 12. Now, what the Gallup 12 is, they did a survey of over hundreds of thousands of companies, the ones that were most successful, and said, tell us what's in your environment. Tell us what makes you successful. And what they did was identify 12 items that have to be in organizations for them to be very successful. Now, in the next few slides, we're going to talk about just some of these. But I think at your leisure, it's real important for you to take a look at them and really measure your organization to the Gallup 12 and see which ones you're good at and which ones you're not, because there could be a learning lesson here. So, in terms of the first top four, the one we're going to focus on is number 4. In the last 7 days, I've received recognition or praise for doing good work. What this tells us is, as leaders, individual contributors need to know where they're at. I have met with individual contributors in various organizations and would ask them, when's the last time your leader has given you recognition or praise? Would it surprise you that for a lot of the companies that I deal with, they tell me that the last time they got any recognition was in their last performance review? Now imagine that. They actually sat down with their employee and they gave them some kind of feedback over a year ago. A successful motivational organization gives constant recognition and praise. And it gives them constant feedback on where they're at. So in terms of your particular environment, do you get that? Do you get a leader, do you get others who give you positive feedback? Now, we all know that leaders sometimes will say what's not getting done. Or sometimes it's called gotcha management, where they come around and say, I gotcha, which is, I found you doing something wrong, and I'm telling you right now. Well, part of recognition and praise means also positive, that you catch them as well doing something great. Looking at the other next 4, that's real important here, is looking at number 8, that the mission and purpose of the company makes me feel my job's important. It's understanding, the individual contributors want to understand what the purpose of their company is and how their job actually relates to it. For many organizations and for many leaders, they don't provide this information. And it's real important for individuals to understand how their particular job fits in the big picture. So a motivational environment will be able to have this and be able to articulate this. And in our last 4, Looking at number 12. In the last year, I've had opportunities to work, to learn, and grow. What motivates most employees is their ability to grow themselves and their skill set. And opportunities means not only opportunities in the organization, but the organization provides proactive opportunities to them. Does the leader come up to them and say, we have some new opportunities for you, and I think you might be a good fit for this? So it's real important for leaders to understand this. And as I said earlier, it'll be well worth for you to look at the Gallup 12 and measure your organization toward it. Because the number of instances that you have, or the most of these things you have in your culture, tells us how motivational it is. If you don't have many, that might be a sign for improvement. And that might be your homework for this week, is to look at the Gallup 12. So, what's the secret of motivation? You're telling me. And here is the best part of today's show. Okay, well, the second best. I mean, after Bill kind of land-based me before we started the show. The important part of motivation, and here is the secret, is understanding the concept of leverage. Now, let me paint you a picture here. Let's say that you had a big boulder that was kind of on the side of a mountain, and I asked you to move that. Would you go up to that boulder and try to push it? Now, if you did, what would probably happen is that boulder would sit still, because you don't have any leverage to be able to really move that boulder. What the key thing is you have to find the leverage. And by finding the leverage, what it might mean is if I gave you a big lead pipe and you can somehow jam it down, maybe you can pull enough leverage on it to move the rock, because that's where you would probably have the best success. You see, motivation is the same way. You need to find that lever that's going to push each individual person you lead. And that is the secret. The secret also includes a deep-seated reason. Each individual has an internal driver. That driver is going to push them to motivate. Now let me step back to what I said earlier about money. Money is a temporary aphrodisiac. What really motivates that individual? What motivates them to do a great job? It may not be just money. It may be just having an opportunity. It may be just having a say in decisions. It may even be just given a chance to do new things. But each person is different. The big challenge I have when I go into companies is a leader thinks that people will like them. As we've seen in other shows, that's not the case. Each person is individual. You know, just like parents, when I talk about their kids, are both kids that they have the same? No! There's some that like blue, the color blue. Some like the color yellow. So the whole concept is, as a leader, we need to find out what motivates each individual person. And the question I get all the time, now you can write the answer to this one too, because here's a golden nugget for you. They say, well, how do I find out? Simple. Are you ready for it? You simply ask. What I used to do back at when I used to work in corporations, is I used to take people out and said, what do you want to do when you grow up? Now, it was a funny statement, but the people who reported to me and my managers knew. It was a kind of a statement to say, what do you want to do? What do you want to do to develop yourself? And me as the leader, what can I do to give you those opportunities? Because each person was different. So the key part here is you have to ask, but it also means you have to be curious, which takes time, and it takes important time and investment of time. So that's kind of your assignment this week, is to find out for people that are on your team. Now, there are many different things that drive people, and there's a whole bunch of theories. And there's a few theories I'm just going to throw out to you now that's important to understand. But there's a theory out there called the theory of needs, where someone is really about achievement. They're driven to succeed based on achievement. Second might be power, that they want to lead others. Or thirdly, it's affiliation. It's to be able to deal with others. And then we've all heard this about Maslow's hierarchy, in which people have to migrate through each of these particular steps to be successful in their careers. So there are different theories that are out there, but it's important to understand these. But most importantly, and I want to bring up, is the whole styles thing. Now, for many of you who've been watching the show religiously, and thank you, and I know who you are, but for others, this may be something relatively new. See, the different styles, the way people communicate, also will show what motivates them. To kind of go over this grid real quickly, because it kind of looks kind of busy, but once you understand it, it kind of makes sense. There are 4 major styles that are out there. And by looking at your individual contributors on your team or the employees on your team, this will kind of give you a good sense of where they may fall in terms of their particular motivation. So if you look on the left-hand side, top left-hand side, the dominant style, who are very fast-paced and very task-focused, these are our assertive types. These are competitive types. These are our people who are focused on results. These people are very competitive. These people look at ways to win. Their goal is to win. Well, they're motivated by challenge. These people like challenge. So if I had a person on my team, what I would do is give this person challenging opportunities. I would give them challenging tasks to be successful. Well, guess what demotivates them? Well, of course, something that's not challenging. Something that may be quite redundant in terms of nature would drive them absolutely crazy. If I gave this particular style the task of taking tolls on a toll road, after about 5 minutes, it would drive them particularly crazy. So if you have this style on your team, what you want to do is feed them challenge and give them challenge. To the right of them is the influencer, who is a very fast-paced person and very people-oriented. These are your people who are enthusiastic, positive. They're the ones that keep people motivated. These are your people who are very social and can talk to other people. Well, what motivates them is doing things with people. They like to be the center of attention. So how about giving them tasks that's going to make them stand out? Give them tasks that's going to be something that's going to make them stand out in front of the room. Now, what's going to demotivate them? It's not doing anything with people. So if you put them on a task in the corner, it'll drive them absolutely crazy. So you want to be able to apply the right particular task for that person. If you look underneath them, the steadiness, they're very people-oriented and slower-paced, right? These are our calm, composed people. These are our people who are very team-oriented. These are people who are very even-keeled in their approach, great listeners. Well, what motivates them is security. So what's important for them is acquiring some knowledge, doing something that's going to help them for the team. They'll be motivated by working with the team and be motivated with doing something as a unit to be successful. And lastly, our compliance person. This is our person who's very detailed-oriented, meticulous, kind of follow rules and procedures. Well, they're going to be motivated by creating process, creating procedures. So the key thing we want to do is give them opportunities to be able to do that, to be the expert, because that's what these people are. So you can see that this drives what may motivate some of your people on your team. Are you mismatching people based on their style in a particular job? And if you are, this may be an indication of why they're not too motivated. Because I'll tell you what, if I have a very assertive, aggressive person who's up for challenge, and I'm not giving it to them, how motivated are they going to be? But there's some barriers we have to watch out for as leaders. And it's important for you to know these. Okay, one of the things is dealing with outside pressures. Understanding that people are going to be impacted by those. So we're going to talk about those in a second. We have to look at our procedures. Are they unproductive? Are they not helping us to achieve what we're looking for? And finally, challenging personalities. Do you have some of those in your team? Because you have to deal with those kind of barriers in order to build a productive, motivating environment. So let's get back to the outside pressures. What could cause someone to be unmotivated? Of course, there's health issues. If someone is dealing with those, they may not be the most motivated in situations. Family issues. Could be a family sickness. It could be someone has recently passed away. It could be dealing with those issues. A funny story on this is I was dealing with a company who had a high performer. And a manager came up to me and said, You know, Ted, I've had this person who's been a high performer, but boy, they've really been slacking over the last month and a half, and I'm at wit's end. I don't know what to do. My question to this person's manager was, have you talked to this person? And of course, they said, well, they kind of have, but they really didn't find any particular reason. Well, what's funny is I found out a day or so later from Human Resources that they saw this person on the side, and they were in a conference room crying. Found out that their grandmother, who they were very close to, was passing away. Now, would that affect motivation and performance? You bet. Did this manager do their job? Unfortunately not. Don't be like that. What you need to do is really find out from your people why that might be impacting their performance. That was a simple conversation which they could have found out what the real reason was and been there to support their employee. Now, going back to that list, economy. We're in a troubled economy. That could also be providing outside pressures and impacting motivation. Relationships. Relationships internal, relationships external. And lastly, commitments. I'm sure many of you have had a list of commitments that have gone down, right? In terms of number? Of course not. But commitments can also cause these outside pressures and impacts in individuals' motivation. The last part I want to talk about in today's show is really looking at those unproductive systems. What are those things in your organization that may be impacting your ability as a leader to build motivation? First one is inadequate training. Think about this. Some of the styles want to learn new things. Some of these styles want to learn new technologies. What happens if there's not training? Or the old policy of, why don't you go buy a book at Barnes & Noble and read it? You know, I laugh about that, but I used to work for a company that was very similar to that. Well, inadequate training can affect a person's motivation, because everyone wants to do a good job, believe it or not, and they want to be able to make a difference. But if they don't have the proper training, how can they? And how can they grow? And as we've seen earlier with some of the styles, that's real important to them. Hiring the wrong people. Let me tell you, this is probably one of the worst things that can happen. Because the whole thing is you want to hire the right type of people for the right environment. Do we run into problems with that? Are you finding that you're hiring the wrong people? And if you are, what's that tell you about you? What are you not asking? What are you not looking for? Because to hire the wrong person can actually impact a motivational culture. So you as a leader can make a big difference in hiring the right people, because to have that right mix in the environment is going to help you to be just as successful. And lastly, career paths. I mean, in many organizations that I deal with, what I find is that there's no career paths. I find that what happens is that employees look at their situation and say, I can't move up, I can't develop my career, and as a result, they get impacted. That could affect motivation. Matter of fact, I just talked to a human resource professional who just said the same thing. Found out that their particular career path was pretty much at its height. Now, how do you think that's going to affect someone's motivation if they think they can't move up? It's big time. And as leaders, we have an impact. And it's important as leaders to be able to have some kind of career paths for your people in your organization. What's the next step for some of them? Where can they go? What can they do? That's kind of on your shoulders. So we covered a lot in today's show in regards to this whole thing of motivation. So Bill, you can see I really stepped up today in today's show and really got it going. But anyways, in kind of wrapping up, as a leader, it's your job to really research each individual's motivation. Find their leverage. Take that time. It's an investment of time that's tantamount for you as a leader. You can't not do this. And when I coach my leaders on this, I tell them, this is something they have to do. There is no ifs, ands, buts about it. They need to find out what motivates each individual. So your job this week is to look at that Gallup 12 and rate your company and where they're at and see what you need to do as a leader to build up that motivation. If there's anything we can do to help, my name is Ted Gorski. Our company is called Get Your Edge. Our website is www.getyouredge.com. If we can be of any assistance, we'd love to help you. So thanks again for tuning in for today's show, and keep them motivated.